stage 4 lung cancer, 33 years old.
Wow.
Pretty crazy. I feel like in a weird way, the Lord has entrusted me with cancer to steward.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Entrusted podcast. We're excited to be here tonight with our good friend, Bo Bradford. We have the usual crew, and Bo has an amazing story to tell, as we all do. And we're excited to dig into that tonight and hopefully encourage a lot of people through God's faithfulness in your life. So thanks for being here tonight.
Absolutely. Thank y'all.
Making the drive over to Auburn.
Absolutely.
Central time zone.
Central time. Yeah. He was joking earlier. It took him 0 minutes to get here, and it's going to take him 2 hours to get home. Yeah. So it's kind of just the psychological warfare of living close to the time zones.
I tell you, it's tough. I mean, when I was in school at Auburn, it made it very tempting, to stay at home in LaGrange and get some laundry done, and can make it in negative 15 minutes.
That's right.
Nice.
Yeah, it's nice.
Awesome.
So on this podcast, we obviously talk about the things that we've been entrusted with, and it doesn't matter what your story is out there, whether you are what you would consider to just be a normal person walking through an ordinary life, or if you are a well-known public figure. God's given us all something. And so we're excited to kind of dig into what's been going on with you. And I think this is going to resonate with a lot of people, because a lot of people have the fear of facing your mortality, or getting a diagnosis you're not ready for, or getting that phone call that you're not anticipating. And so that's where we're kind of going tonight. But we typically open with this kind of segment we've dubbed kind of your first birth into your second birth. And so where are you from, family dynamics, where'd you grow up, what kind of life did you lead, and then how did the Lord save you? Take it wherever you want.
Yeah, absolutely. So grew up in LaGrange, Georgia. Huge Auburn fan. Growing up, I was a golfer.
Still is a golfer.
Still is. Yeah, still am a golfer.
Are you better than Blaine? Bandon Dunes sweatshirt over there.
He's a stick.
Nowhere close. But I do enjoy playing. But came to Auburn, and I will say this: I got saved when I was 16, and it was genuine. Fell in love with the Lord when I was 16 years old. I actually grew up leading worship, and led worship for my high school youth group. Led worship when I got to college, in a couple campus ministries. And at a point in time, like, I wanted to do full-time ministry. And I think my senior year, when I made the decision to go into the professional world and kind of close the door on the option of full-time ministry, it was almost like I closed that book, and I dove headfirst into the professional world, and went a period of time after I graduated where I did not lead worship at a church. Then I served at a church when we lived in Savannah for a little bit, and that was great. But then it started feeling like a chore, and I just remember like telling my wife, this sounds so bad. I remember telling my wife, like, I just don't know that I have time for this. And so I retracted. And a couple months before my wife gave birth to our first child, so this would have been 2021, was the last time that I led worship. And fast forward, now we've got 2 beautiful kids. My wife and I run a chicken salad chick, and that's blessed us immensely. But we have 2 kids, and this past June, actually, so I'll preface it. The worship leader at my church asked me to lead worship the first week in June, and I sent him a very long response as to how I just transitioned into this business director role. I'm traveling a lot. I really don't think that I have time, but I might be able to serve 1 weekend a quarter. That's what I told him. And 2 weeks after I sent that text message, I lost my voice. And
I didn't know that part of the story. That's fascinating.
yeah. And there's a backstory to, we started going back to the church that we grew up in. So like, this was a guy that I used to lead worship with when I was in high school. And he knew that we were going back to the church, and he was, but yeah, lost my voice. We kind of go through the normal protocols of, basically they find out that my vocal cord is paralyzed.
Is this like a momentary thing? Like you wake up one day and you're just like, I can't talk? Or did it happen in the middle of the day? Or and how serious?
Were you raspy for a little while? Like,
yeah. So I remember talking with my wife on the phone one weekend. She was at the beach, and I just remember telling her like, hey, my voice feels very tired. Like it just feels like it requires a lot of air. And that was on a Saturday. And then Monday I was leading a presentation, continued to kind of just feel labored, and then it would squeak every once in a while. I was like, this is kind of weird. And then, dude, by Wednesday it was gone. And this was so my company has a shutdown for July 4th weekend. Or July 4th week. And so I knew we had, a full week that I could kind of get this figured out. So the Thursday before this shutdown, I go to an urgent care. They treat me for laryngitis, bronchitis. They give me a steroid pack. And I actually, too, also had this pain in my chest at that time. And the pain went away. And I was thankful for that, but didn't help the voice. And so that week we're out of town and we come back. So it's been about a week and a half, but really about 2 weeks of, something not being right. And we've got a close family friend who is a nurse practitioner for an ENT office. And she stuck a camera through my nose, and yeah, they noticed that the vocal cord was paralyzed. And the next day it was confirmed that it was indeed paralyzed, and kind of out of precaution, they order CT scans. It's not the primary cause of paralyzed vocal cord. I had gotten hand, foot, and mouth for my kids. And so I thought it was like a post-viral thing, which is the primary cause of paralyzed vocal cords. And generally it happens and then it goes away. And then it comes back. But yeah, like I went into this CT scan, like not thinking anything, like thinking this is just precautionary. I'd used ChatGPT. I knew all the stats, of, what the likelihood was. And like, yeah, cancer was like very low on the list. I felt great. And yeah, we middle of July, get the CT scan. That Friday, they confirmed that there's a mass in my chest. And by Monday, I'm meeting with a thoracic surgeon at Emory. And Wednesday is my biopsy. So that's how quickly everything happened. So yeah. And then during the biopsy, so what they saw on the scan, there was a large tumor about the size of a lime at this point. And there was a small tumor that was about the size of a grape in a place in the lung where they could have removed it. And so that was the plan, was that they were going to remove the small tumor. They were going to biopsy it, see if it was cancerous. And when they went in to remove this small tumor, they noticed that it had escaped the chest wall of the lung, or it escaped the lung and it was on the chest wall. And so they ended up getting tissue, which made the biopsy easier, but it was not great that it had escaped the lung, because at that point you're looking at stage 3 at best. And then the next week, I got a PET scan, actually on my 33rd birthday. And that's when they found spots on my liver, my pancreas, my left hip and right butt cheek. And stage 4 lung cancer, 33 years old.
Wow.
Pretty crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you just kind of describe a little bit, even before the cancer diagnosis? I mean, kids are 4 and
1.
yeah. I mean, not having your voice as a father of a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. Can you just walk us through that, even before the cancer diagnosis, like what that time was like?
Gosh.
The helplessness.
Yeah, it was so hard. It was so hard. I mean, and it was like a literal whisper. Like, I had to be right in your ear in order for you to hear me. And I got to where I started like clapping and snapping in order to get people's attention, which I just felt awful doing that. To be honest with you, I think that season of not having a voice, the Lord used it to expose so much sin in my life that like I was completely blinded to, like anger, impatience. I mean, you know, I'm a timely person. I like being in places on time. There are other people in my household that don't. And, you know, but like when I'm staying,
It's the 1-year-old.
Yeah. Process of deduction there.
yeah, but you know, when I'm standing by the back door and like, I just feel helpless, you know, and it's like, normally I would have said something that I might've regretted, you know?
Now you just have to sit there and just soak in what you want to say.
Process my thoughts. I mean, seriously.
Stop.
But I think the Lord used it to expose a lot of that. A lot of things that I felt very justified in, of saying, like, love your wife through this, you know, love your kids through this. And I think also, like, I don't know, I was a very selfish person, and I think I was blinded to that too. Like, golf had become a point of contention in our marriage. Like I had 4 or 5 fantasy football teams. I was always, you know, wheeling and dealing there. Like there were just things that I had cluttered my life with, just a lot of noise. And I think that is Satan's primary goal in America, is to fill our lives with a lot of noise and distraction. And things went radio silent for me. And I think the Lord knew that I needed that.
You just touched on it a little bit, but the Lord saved you at 16. This happens right about 33. So for those 17 years, and specifically leading up to it, like I said, you just kind of touched on this, but
Yeah.
where was your spiritual health? What was your participation in your local church? You said the worship leader reached out about serving and whatnot, but like something like this will wake you up quickly.
Oh yeah.
Lord willing. And it has, but where were you prior to that first week or so of all these tests?
Yeah. We were going to church, and like I was involved in a weekly Bible study. But I think if I'm honest with myself, my heart was far from God. Mm-hmm. And I think I was going through motions. Honestly, I think my whole life was just a series of going through motions, and the things that I looked most forward to were like, I was living like weekend to weekend, Auburn football season. Like I was ready to go to the game on Saturday. Like I didn't have this fervor for the Lord, right? Like he wasn't my highlight during the week. I had all these other things that I had created and put into my week that had become my gods, you know? And yeah, I think spiritually, like there was definitely a desire within me, but it was almost like I had this block. And I'll tell you all this too. From the time I was probably 12, 13 years old, dealt with a pornography addiction. And there were times in my life that I fought it really well, and there were seasons that I didn't. And, I think over time, just kind of becoming numb to that, the Lord used this season to wake me up and realize how, destructive that actually was. And so by God's grace, I know I'm fighting it. I'm fighting it daily, but yeah, it's been something really since, about a month or so after I got diagnosed, that I've been able to fight really well.
I'd love to push into that for a second, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
When you say there was times that you were fighting it well, what did that look like? And then ultimately, why do you feel like you didn't, until this wake up call, why do you feel like there was fall back into it?
Dude, I think it's this white knuckle mentality of like, you got to do this, you got to fix this. Where I feel like the change has occurred is like, gosh, we sang a song at church this past week, turn your eyes on Jesus, and then the things of earth grow strangely dim. Dude, I think that there had to be a repositioning in my heart of what I truly loved the most. And now it's like when my mind is in neutral, I'm thinking about Jesus and what he did for me. And gosh.
This is something that I've experienced in my life too. We've talked about it on here. I think with specific sin patterns in our lives, it's not so much that there's Colossians 3 is put on then as God's chosen one these things, and put away from you these things. It's the opposite order, put off and then put on. So the big theological term would be vivification and mortification. So we need to mortify certain sins, kill them within us, and then also vivify or bring vibrance to the other things. And it's not so much the fight against sin patterns is replacing our loves and increasing our desire for the right things. And God will faithfully do that in us. I think of James. What you're describing practically is what James says, that if you submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil and he will flee from you. And so later in that passage, to humble ourselves before the Lord, because he'll humble us if we don't. I've experienced that in my life. And so I say all that to say, it's not that my desire or my temptation towards sexual sin is any less than it was when I was 19 or 20, but in God's faithfulness to me and in giving me a new heart and in changing my desires, the temptation is still strong, but my love for obedience and my desire to be faithful to my wife and all those other things have just increased over time. So it's a fight, but it's a different fight than one was when I was 20.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it just takes a greater affection too. I mean, you have to have a greater affection for Christ than for what's on your phone or whatever it may be. And I don't know, I think we talk so much about struggling with it or fighting with it, but then, like I said, it's that white knuckle, and it's like, what steps are we actually taking? And then what are we actually replacing it with? Because, and even like you were saying earlier let's step back from the porn discussion for a section, just your life in general, how you felt like it was removed and distant from God. And then on top of that, you've got this porn addiction that the devil is getting a foothold in. And, I struggled with porn for a large portion of my life, and my anger was worse when I was doing that. I was lazier. And it's interesting now, porn is something that the secular world is starting to point out all these different things. Like even non-Christians are now like, it kills your motivation. And it's like, well, we've known that it's bad for you for a long time. But on both sides of that, the more you fill your mind with those bad things, the more you fill your mind with the things of this earth, the more likely you are to go back to it. And so when you're in this just kind of going through the motions, doing all the things, even good things like fantasy football, if that's what most of your time is on, it can just be easy to get back into that. But when you're in the Word and you're in community and you're doing the good things, it all goes together. But it takes both the action, the mortification, but also just having that greater affection for Christ.
Takes practice too.
And accountability.
Yeah. We just moved 3 weeks ago, And I heard this as a sermon illustration a long time ago from Matt Chandler, and it's stuck with me. And I've been reminded of it multiple times through multiple moves. When you first move, let's align the analogies here. When God saves you, your residence has been sin and rebellion and brokenness. And now God moves you to a new address. Every time I leave Iron Tribe and come home to get my work done, I work from home, it takes multiple times of missing my new turn. I'm instinctively going to my old address. And what the Holy Spirit...
I almost went there on the way over here.
Yeah, it's happening to you in my life. What the Holy Spirit is doing in us is we are just like, I'm just going to my address. And what happens is over time, you instinctively go to your new address, which is being forgiven and a child of God and fully accepted apart from our works and our obedience. And it takes a few going back to our old address before we instinctively turn toward the new address. And that's what temptation is. And so you can just get in a rut of being like, I'm just going back where I used to live. And so I've done that. I missed my turn today. Morgan's like, turn. I was like, oh, I forgot where we're going.
I missed the turn.
Did you? Yeah. It's easy.
Before we keep going, I have a question. Yeah. Just in terms of the different sins that you were talking about prior to being kind of blinded by them, the one thing I keep going back to based off what you said was like, in the way that I look at my own life is like, number one, I feel like I live like I've got all the time in the world, that I'm not going to die, that this sin that I'm pushing off today, I can fix tomorrow or I can fix in a year. And just based on, just what you just said is just so just convicting in this moment. But I think that's something that I struggle with, is that I think that I have this time that I don't. And I guess your story is just, and at 33, that's 8 years for me just to have that happen. And like, it's just, and as somebody that worries about stuff happening to me continuously. And then there's days where, I think I'm going to live forever.
Are you a hypochondriac?
No, I'm not a hypochondriac.
I am. That's what I'm asking.
No, I'm not. I'm just, I'm just aware.
Been saying you are.
No,
he gets monthly blood test.
I'm just aware. Well, it's every few months, but anyway, that just resonated with me, because there's sins that I know that I should fight. Like today, I'm just thinking about like pride, like how I spoke to somebody on the phone. It's like, oh, I'll fix that tomorrow because I've got tomorrow, but I'm not promised tomorrow. And so this
can be a counseling session from an old guy to a young guy right here.
8 years. Yeah. Are you 34 now or 30?
How old am I? I'm 33.
Okay.
No. Yeah. I was born in 92.
The chemo hit your brain cells.
Yes. Dude, honestly, yeah, like memory's not quite there. So
I want to wrap a bow on the pornography discussion, because before we go back to some of this, just because we have a 97% male audience per the statistics and analytics. And of that 97%, I think the stats would be like 99% of those men have seen porn, and probably 90% of them have had a serious struggle with it at some point in their life. And the other 9 are probably lying. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So just, if you were to speak to the 90% of men who are watching this and then may later use that same exact phone to watch porn, and it took stage 4 cancer for you to wake up to this, what would you say to them to kind of shake them out of this and to help them fight this battle that they're going through kind of alone, probably?
That's good. Yeah. No, that's good. I think, it kind of goes back to what you were saying. Like when you view it in light of like your days are numbered, like wisdom comes from that. I think Psalm 90, I just pulled it up. So to teach us to number our days that we may get a heart of wisdom. And it took me facing mortality to look and see how silly that really was. I also think too, like, we never play the tape out on what so lust is the seed form of adultery, right? And if you play the tape out on that, what does adultery lead to? It leads to hurt for your wife or hurt for your kids, ruining your life. But we're only seeing it in seed form. And so I think, understanding that, like, the weight of that could have long-standing consequences with how you're able to love your wife, how you're able to love your kids. I'll tell you, like a lot of it really did start changing for me when I had my son, and looked at him and I was like, I don't know that I'd be proud if he turned out like me. And that was a tough reality to kind of come to grips with. So I think the Lord had like started kind of jostling some things up in my heart, like prior to all of this. But yeah, we're only looking at it for like that momentary pleasure. But we never play the tape out. And there was a guy that gave his testimony to our Sunday school class at church that went to rehab for sex addiction and was cheating on his wife and by God's grace, like the Lord has delivered him from that. He's open, he's talking about it, and is sharing it. But it's like that probably started with porn, So we never play out what it could become. And I think the way to make it, hopefully stop it, is you have to share it. You gotta have guys that you're sharing. I'll tell you, the most freeing thing that I ever did was admit it to my wife. And that was the hardest thing that I've ever done. But also the most freeing thing that I've ever done. And now she's able to hold me accountable to it. So yeah,
this doesn't matter, but this is a curiosity question. Did you have your voice for that conversation?
It was,
because this all kind of happened in the middle, or were you having to like type out this discussion?
So, I mean, I would have these conversations with her. So like my voice is kind of in like stages. So it was like gone for like 3 months. And then I got a temporary procedure done where they injected lip filler into my paralyzed vocal cord. And so that like gave
Botox?
me, it was, I mean, yeah.
Nice.
And so it just fattened it. If you think about like your vocal cords, like two hands clapping, my left one was paralyzed way over here. And so they just fattened it and brought it to the middle where my right one had something to hit. And yeah. And so that helped for a little bit. And then the Lord did something pretty wild, with my vocal cord kind of over Christmas, that we really have no medical explanation for, but he moved my paralyzed vocal cord to the exact spot, to the millimeter that a surgeon would have implanted it.
So it's still paralyzed, but it's in the correct spot now.
It's still paralyzed, but
now the other one can touch it.
Now the other one can touch it. So like, so my options were, either, I really didn't have any other option other than surgery. And they would have put an implant in where they would have fixed the left vocal cord, which is the paralyzed vocal cord, right in the midpoint. So like two hands clapping. So your left one's right here. Your right one can still hit it. And yeah, like supernatural surgeon came in and fixed my paralyzed vocal cord in the exact spot down to the millimeter that the surgeon would have implanted it. When my surgeon looked at it and saw it on camera, he started looking at his hands like this. And I'm like, dude, it wasn't you. It wasn't you. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. To tie a bow on that, everything you just said there was wonderful. And I just would encourage anyone listening to this to fight a sin like that. If you kind of feel guilty about it, but all you're doing is pulling up your bootstraps and trying to white knuckle, I got to stop this because of X, Y, and Z, or to earn favor with God or whatever it might be. Maybe the Lord is wooing you and trying to save you and revealing your sin to you. And you need to trust in Jesus and get a new heart so that you can fight it. Because the only way you can actually change is if you're born again and the Holy Spirit indwells you, because then you have the power to fight the sin. Otherwise, you're just participating in behavioral modification. Mm-hmm. So that's one. And then if you are a Christian and you're wrestling with a sin struggle, like you said, confess it to someone else, because there's so much power, in 1 John, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. And so that's confession before the Lord, but it's also confession before brothers and bringing it into the light. So that was
And don't be afraid if your right arm causes you to sin to chop it off either. I mean, the lengths to which you have to go to fight this should be unreal.
Yes.
I mean, I think that was one of my biggest issues with this struggle for years is I would just kind of cut a little bit. Like I would maybe tell someone and then I would turn on a internet filter, but then, you know, you get on Instagram and you can basically see soft porn on just straight up Instagram. And you can find it on Twitter and Reddit and anywhere you want. It can be out there if you don't cut it off. And so don't be afraid. And, you know, people I think are kind of ashamed sometimes to almost fight it. They don't want to feel like they have to be the guy that gets an internet blocker or can't have Twitter or whatever, but it's an eternal thing and you should do it.
Mm-hmm.
And not only is that destructive, obedience on the other side of it is so life-giving. And it's
100%.
And either through the Lord empowering you to walk in singleness and find your joy in the Lord, or in providing for you a wife where you can fill those desires in a biblically faithful, God-honoring way. And so it's not like, very clearly, let us all four say that Christianity and what God is calling us to in the Bible is not a cosmic buzzkill who's trying to limit our joy. He's saying like, hey, stupid, look over here. It's actually way better on this side of the creek.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say the best year or the best 6 months of our marriage has been the last 6 months.
Yeah.
Do you ever think that you would say the best 6 months of your marriage was when you had stage 4 cancer?
No. Never. And I feel like I've been a better dad. I feel like I've been a better leader at work. You know, and it's all wrapped up in this mindset of like, okay, like I realize that my days are numbered and my entire purpose on earth is to invest in people and to serve people. And it's almost like it was tough for me to put Bo aside when Bo was healthy, you know, but it's a little bit easier to put Bo aside when he's got stage 4 cancer. You know, but I also like, death is like literally a doorway, you know, to what we have coming for us. And I think as I've started to kind of learn and read about heaven and what heaven's going to be like, I am so excited to be there. And everything on earth, I would just want to be an overflow from that. So
let's keep digging into some of the things the Lord's taught you and the spiritual walk through this. But where are you currently with, because we've talked about your diagnosis and all this stuff, but then like, where are we today in March of 2026?
Yeah. And if we miss any timeline,
just cancer wise,
you kind of,
it's like your stage 4 lung cancer spread throughout your metastasized in other parts of your body is typically like, son, you've got 6 months to live.
Yeah.
So like,
can we go back to where we stopped?
Yeah.
Which was
I think we stopped in July.
First CT or the first biopsy.
Yeah. Okay. So we had biopsy July 23rd. July 30th was the PET scan, stage 4. And at that point, it's, you know, they say it's incurable. And so we were really just kind of hoping for a mutation that is treatable. And so
incurable, meaning did they give you a like,
did they ever give you a like, hey buddy,
they never gave me a time. Which honestly, like I'm glad that they didn't. They always kind of offered hope, right? You know, and I think the Lord was, you know, on like the personal side was like also offering hope. So yeah, I mean, the stories kind of coincide of just like what was happening earthly and physically, and then what was happening spiritually. But yeah, so we find out, I guess, middle of August that it is a mutation that they have a targeted therapy for. So targeted therapies it's a pill. It's not radiation. It's not chemo. And the goal is to take a targeted therapy. About 50% of patients respond. And if you respond, you have varying levels of response. And, but there were some patients that had what they call a complete response, which means that you would, show up for a scan and would have nothing. It was a smaller percentage of patients, but they would still have stage 4 cancer, because once it's stage 4, it's in your lymphatic system. They say you have microcells kind of all throughout your body that could pop back up at any point in time. And so you would still be on treatment. You would still go in for your quarterly scans, but there is a chance that some patients can have a complete response, which is no evidence of tumors on a scan. And, so we kind of got like the first bit of good news that I got a favorable mutation. It's the ALK mutation, stage 4 lung cancer. But they had a targeted therapy that, if I responded, I could see some reduction in tumor size. And so,
this is just a technical question. Do they know it's lung cancer because like the largest mass is kind of the originator of the spreading to the other places, or?
Yeah.
Is that what they said?
Yeah. Okay. So like the primary tumor, which was the one that was pinching the nerve that controls the vocal cord, originated in the lung.
Got it.
And so it's kind of where the tumor originates. Yeah.
Another technical question, like how long do you think it was growing before? We asked
that. She said 2 to 5 years. So this tumor, or this type of cancer that I have, it's not formed from a genetic mutation. It is something that sparks within the life cycle of a cell. So probably, some sort of external factor, led to it.
Entrusted is brought to you in part by Primo Golf Apparel. Based out of Utah and built on a simple belief: golfers are athletes. When I first partnered with Primo, I was proud to be their first ever professional ambassador, because what they were doing wasn't just about fashion, it was about function. They were among the first to introduce golf joggers to the game, and they changed how golfers thought about performance wear. Today, Primo's lineup goes way beyond joggers, from polos to outerwear to shorts to leisure wear that actually moves with you. Every piece is designed for golfers who train, grind, and compete, whether that's in the gym, on the range, or in life. So, if you want to look sharp, move freely, and represent what it really means to be an athlete on and off the course, check out Primo Golf Apparel. You can visit primogolfapparel.com and use code Entrusted for 15% off your next order. Primo Golf Apparel. Golfers are athletes.
That kind of brings up a point that I think you shared when you came and spoke to our Bible study that we hadn't gotten to yet. So I may be jumping ahead here, but just God's sovereignty in that you had this cancer for maybe 2 to 5 years, and had you not lost your voice, who knows how much longer you could have gone without knowing this.
Yes. The losing my voice ended up being the biggest blessing in this whole story. So when I got my first CT scan, the primary tumor was 5.5 centimeters. When I got my second CT scan 2 weeks later, it was 6.5 centimeters. So it went from the size of a lime to the size of a small orange in 2 weeks. And that's how quickly it was. Like, I guess once it grows, it starts really growing. And there's no telling, I've talked to several patients that have gotten my contact information, and are dealing with a diagnosis that has gone kind of unchecked for a little bit. And they've all gotten innumerable tumors is what they call it. So this ended up being for stage 4 cancer, I was in the early stages of stage 4, but I only knew it because of my voice. Yeah.
And so how's the therapy going now?
Therapy's going great. So my first scan, so that all of this was end of July. My first scan was in October, and tumor went from 6.5 centimeters to 2.2 centimeters. And then my second scan, which was in January, the 2.2 centimeter went to 1.5.
Wow.
And all the others. The spot on my liver is 8 millimeters now. It started off about 3.5 centimeters, and then every other spot's gone. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, yeah, praise God.
Yeah. Jeez.
That's awesome.
And I tell you what's crazy. I feel the healthiest that I've felt in honestly a long time. And I think a lot of it is like lifestyle factors have changed. I've started eating healthy. Right when I got diagnosed, I went full keto, just to kind of starve everything of sugar, and lost a lot of weight really quickly, and wasn't feeling great there for a bit, but like the Lord has restored a lot of energy and a lot of strength. So
it's awesome.
Yeah.
What understanding do your kids have of everything that's been going on?
They just pray for daddy's voice. And I mean, my daughter thinks that like the Lord has answered her prayer, which like he has, you know, but like for her, it's her prayer, you know. Yeah. It's been the prayer of a lot of people, me included, but yeah, they just know that daddy had a lot of doctor's appointments and is continuing to have doctor's appointments for his voice. And we will tell her at one day. We don't want her finding out from somebody in the community. So.
Yeah.
Wow. I want to hear you just talk a little bit about music and the role that has played throughout this, writing songs, and then obviously now that your voice is back, being able to sing again, because you talked about how that was part of your walk before. And we had the thing where you tell your music minister you can do once a quarter, which is basically nothing.
Yeah.
So can you just kind of talk about that through this whole experience?
Yeah. So, you know, in high school, like when I became a believer, I was on fire for the Lord, and it was all I thought about. It was all I wanted to do. I started writing music in high school, and I tell you what's funny. I have a song that I wrote before I went to college, that's called Use Me. And, the first verse of the song is the same as the second verse of the song. I always knew that was like a really weak part of that song, was the fact that the verses were the same, but I've written a new second verse, like having walked through this season, you know, and it's just like, I have no idea what's going to happen with any of this music. It's just like a way for me to kind of tell God what's on my heart. But I hadn't written music in probably a decade. And it's funny, like when he took my voice from me, it was like I had this passion within me to just start writing music again. And I had no idea if I'd ever be able to sing it. You know, and I think it was maybe you that brought up, you know, you could just write it and have somebody else sing it. Which like I'm totally okay with that. You know, but yeah, it's it's just how I get my thoughts on paper. And it was so tough, like, trying to think through melodies without being able to sing them. I tell you a song that has like completely wrecked me recently is, Heart of Worship by Matt Redman. But it basically talks through like, you know, and kind of the backstory behind that song was he had become a lot about lights and the show and like all the things around worship music that he had lost the heart of worship itself. And so the pastor of his church just ripped the plug on it for like over a year. And he wrote that song in that season. And I feel like the Lord just pulled my voice from me before I learned again how to worship him with my heart. And like there were times when I'd be like in Sunday school, or not Sunday school, like in a worship service at my church, and I'd be like, I'd open my mouth and nothing would come out, but it was like the purest, I don't know. And it hurt. Like it was, cause like my voice to me is like a very personal thing. You know, I grew up singing like, and like I talk to people for work. Like, you know, I felt like the Lord for a season stripped me of my livelihood, and, but he used it to refine me, and then he restored it with a new story to tell.
I literally, that just jogged my memory. I just read Luke chapter 1 this morning. Was Zechariah, and I wonder what his story was when he went in and said, "No, name him John," or didn't say it. Probably wrote it down, I guess. And
I guarantee you, the Lord paralyzed his vocal cord. I've thought about that.
Yeah.
There's always like
isn't it cool? Like that you were reading that this morning, and now we're talking about it. I actually had something very similar. So we had the Bible study that you came and talked to. We had that this morning, and we're going through Joshua right now. And so we were studying Joshua 3 and 4. So 3 is when they come to the banks of the Jordan and they don't know how they're going to get across. They don't know how they're going to enter the promised land, but they know that God has promised that they can go in and that they will conquer the people in there. And then he tells them, I'm going to do amazing work tomorrow. Just be ready, consecrate yourselves and be ready. And they take the Ark of the Covenant and they walk in, they take steps, and then the Jordan just dries up. Well, then chapter 4 is, and there's way more to that, but what I'm getting to that made me think about you, and we talked about you this morning, is chapter 4, then they get to the other side. They've been through this, and the Lord tells them to gather the 12 stones and to use them as a marker and a memorial. That I've got Joshua 4 pulled up here, and it says, when your children ask their fathers in times to come, what do these stones mean? And I was just thinking about like all the songs you're writing, all the different journals that you have, everything that you've been doing in this time. What a gift that's going to be to your kids one day. When they go through their own challenging times and they can look back and see like these stones basically, but see these songs that you've written of the Lord's faithfulness in this tough time. Really, really encouraging.
Thank you for that. I'm reading through Deuteronomy right now, and one of the things that like is like the Lord wants us to remember our version of Egypt, right? Like he keeps telling Israel, remember that I brought you out of Egypt, right? And they set up traditions and they set up feasts to commemorate that. And gosh, I feel like the Lord has taken me on my own like wilderness journey, right? And like all of us have that. But the Lord wants us to remember that. And even the other day, like, you know, long work day, like in my heart, like it almost felt normal. And I was like, Lord, I don't want it to get back to normal. You know, I want to remember what you've done for me. I want to live out of what you've done for me and what he's done for all of us on the cross. Like
100%.
Live out of that. Yeah, I don't want to get back to the way things were. I feel like I have a greater appreciation for life. I feel like I have a greater love for other people.
Do you have ways, I mean, other than the songs that you're writing, are there other ways that you're remembering this daily? Because I think he wants us to remember, but we also have to be told to remember because otherwise we forget. And I haven't been through cancer, but I've been through other challenging seasons of life. And you get to these points where the only thing you can turn to is God. And then as soon as you hit a new point in your life where you feel like you can turn to anything but God, we usually do, and we forget it. Yeah. So like, is there anything you're doing to just continue to have that reliance day by day?
You know, I love my time in the morning. And it used to be something that like was kind of a struggle to get up and read. Like, again, there were seasons where I did it, you know, well, and there were seasons that I didn't. But now I'm like, I mean, I'm waking up before my alarm sometimes, you know, and my alarm's a lot earlier than it used to be. But literally like just spending time alone with the Lord, like I crave it. And I think that was the thing. Like I had a lot of noise in my life, and then all of a sudden I had no noise in my life. And like in my job, I talked to people on the phone most hours of the day. And when people started learning that Bo couldn't talk, they stopped calling. And I mean, I had breaks throughout my day where like I literally just sat and meditated on the Lord. And I'll tell you, I had an experience in the middle of August this was like before I'd even started a therapy, and like was just sitting in silence with the Lord. And I had this unshakable thought that came into my mind. Oh, I'm going to restore your voice. And then it happened. So it's like, I think the Lord meets us in these quiet moments. Like it's not every day that I hear from him like that. And it wasn't even like an audible voice. It was just an unshakable thought that I know I didn't manifest. But then it happened. And I think we need to, as Christians, get into it. Like you read the New Testament, you see Jesus like pulling himself away to pray, right? And I think we need to get in that practice, more often, build it into our like daily routines, remove ourselves from the noise and the distraction. And I think that's where the Lord meets us.
It is so like it's encouraging and convicting how simple it really is at times to just have a walk in a relationship with the Lord, like to just get in the Word and to be in prayer and to be saturated by the Word and all those things. Like at the core, it really is pretty simple. Mm-hmm. But yet we find so many ways to get away from it until we have no other option, really, which is just so unfortunate that that's the way that.
Because we don't fight against flesh and blood.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I got a quick question too. Just
hit us with something good, Brock.
I mean, we, in teaching Sunday school, we've been talking about the sin cycle. And
Presbyterians do Sunday school too.
Sweet.
No, that makes me feel better. I didn't know that.
We have picture books and we
read
the
good.
Bible. And
that's a very Baptist-y thing. I was just checking.
Well, I say all that to say, like,
catechism at some point, but
what's practical ways for somebody to get, I don't want to say restart, but it can be overwhelming. And I look back even just like when I gave my life to Christ in 2018 at the Oaks retreat. And then I had 18 guys that held me accountable. We read the Bible every day. And then it was like we got into college and same thing, kind of fell off a little bit, got back into that cycle. Then it was like boom, back again. What are some practical ways you've seen as you've kind of kickstarted back up, things that just help you restart that? And obviously I know you have to like get that. So you have to have Jesus in your life and in the center of your life and everything. But what are practical ways that you can see to get going again for somebody that maybe has not?
Yeah.
Now getting diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that'll do it.
Yeah. That'll do it.
That'll do it quick.
But somebody that's not facing that.
Yeah. I think I listened to a sermon recently that basically said like rest at the foot of the cross. And I know we all hear that and it sounds cliche, but like literally if you rest there and you imagine yourself there and you imagine Jesus hanging there for your sin, you realize that that's your sin that hung him there. Having a right understanding of that. And I think prior to all this, I used to see my sin as like a level 2, level 3 sin. I have started to see my sin as like level 10 sin. And because of that, like I realized that Jesus paid a level 10 price, like a level million price, and I think like having that right understanding of like what Jesus did for us on the cross, the debt that was paid so that we could be now like co-heirs, like
sharing the inheritance
of Jesus, like for eternity.
When we should be dead.
Yes. Yeah. Like the difference between like mercy and grace, like I've like kind of started to understand and realize that in this season too. But like mercy is just not getting what you deserve, right? Like if we just didn't get hell, like that's mercy. But not only do we not get hell, we get everything that's his. Like that's crazy to think about. It really is crazy to think about. Like somebody said like, okay, if my daughter does something wrong and I just don't punish her, that's mercy. But if she does something wrong and then I take her to go get ice cream, like that's grace, right? And we get to experience that on like a scale times infinity for all of eternity. And so, yeah, I think it's having like a right understanding of our sin, but also having a right understanding of the grace that's bestowed upon us that almost draws us into that place of like, I want to know this guy more, you know?
Well, and the way you said resting at the cross, like, I think if we're all honest with ourselves, like we know when we're resting and when, like I can look back at even the last 2 months, like from a practical standpoint of life, like my rest even at night is 10 times better than it was a year ago when I was wrestling with anger, pride, XYZ every single day, filled with that emotion every minute of the day. Come home to my wife, go to work to everybody around me. And so the resting part, like I have felt that in the last 2 months, and like it's taken 2 years to get through what I was going through, but it is so true. Like and you can feel it, and you have to be honest with yourself when you're not resting too. And I think oftentimes we're not, but that was good. I appreciate it.
I mean, it sounds like, would you agree, feel like that you just have a greater understanding of just the simplicity, but the depth of the gospel?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And even like do you feel like you understand even more so to some extent the suffering that Christ experienced?
Yeah. You know, I think prior to all of this, I lived a very like cush life, like didn't really experience any suffering. Like, you know, up until a year and a half ago, I had all 4 of my grandparents still living, you know, like had never really gone through any sort of serious trial. My wife and I had we had a miscarriage. That was probably the hardest thing that I've walked through. But yeah, like I think I've started to understand the Lord's purpose in suffering. You know, I think God is sovereign over suffering. Like I've studied a lot in the book of Job. And yeah, Satan enacts all forms of earthly suffering, but God allows him to do it. And why does God allow him to do it? Right? Romans 8:28 is true. He does it for our good and for his glory, you know? So yeah, I think understanding kind of his purposes in suffering, and like also knowing that like I'm sharing in Christ's suffering in this, in a very tiny way. The suffering that he had to endure was so much more than stage 4 cancer, you know? And so like in a weird way, like I'm honored that I get to proclaim his name through this. You know, I think 2 Corinthians 4:16-18 talks about how though the outer self is wasting away, the inner self is being renewed day by day. And I'm going to botch it, but it's like, for this light momentary affliction cannot compare to the eternal weight of glory that is preparing for us. For what is seen is transient, what is unseen is eternal. And I think the Lord has used this like poisoning of my flesh, this affliction of my flesh, to refine what is eternal, right? And that's God's purpose in suffering, you know? And then also like, he wants to remind us that like, hey, the place is broken. Like the world that you're living in is broken, you know? And I had tried to build my entire life up around just my comfort, my convenience, you know, my selfishness. And the Lord broke me of that. And I started realizing that other people are suffering too, that I now have a heart for.
Could you just like paint us a clear picture of when you talk about the cush life and the ways that you built your life around your own selfishness? I think there would be a lot of things that most of the listeners and even myself, I know you're going to say things that I am building my life around, and things that you may have been finding comfort in or identity in, that now you just see in an eternal perspective is so meaningless. So can you kind of paint that picture of just name it, what some of those things were that your life looked like, and then now how you see those in right perspective?
Yeah. I think how I valued my money. I, was maxing out my 401k. I was putting on all these different projections, and I think the Lord, I mean, what good is a nice 401k if you never get to enjoy it? But I think what the Lord taught me in that was my greed. But also it was keeping me from being generous in the here and now. And so I've got a different view of my money where it's like the Lord's money now and it's mine to steward. And because of that, I've been a lot more generous with it, which I feel like that's what the Lord calls us to do. So
might be something you've been entrusted with.
Maybe something I've been entrusted with. I think
I was good at playing.
Yeah, really good. I think my job, my job performance, the way that people viewed me, I think there's a lot, and like my job is a blessing from the Lord. So like if anybody's hearing that, like, it's your relationship with your job that matters. And I think I was teetering on unhealthy relationship, where it was starting to affect all these other things in my life. I would carry it over into my marriage. I would carry it over into how I, parented my kids. I felt like I was absent for a lot of the first year of my son's life. And, some travel and stuff you can't really get around. But like for me, I was elevating career over a lot of these other things that had more eternal value. So I think job, money, comfort, my comfort in the here and now, and then my comfort in the life that I was building for myself. Somebody told me not too long ago, like retirement is not a biblical principle. That's not to say that like we should 100% plan and save. Because, I think the Lord calls us to be good stewards, right? And we can do that with being generous. But saving for our family. But I had a wrong relationship with my money, and I think the Lord exposed that. But I also think things like anger, greed, pride, selfishness. Yeah, I mean a lot of these things, and then like how I was finding enjoyment was like, so I would grind work wise. I would not be present for my family. I would idolize kind of the times that I would get to play golf, or the times that I would, have vacations or whatever. Like those became the things that I looked forward to. So I was living from event to event to event to event to event, and I'd keep my head down, when I wasn't. Now it's like I look forward to every single day because I know that every day is a gift from the Lord. I'm grateful for every single breath. It's like I flipped my mindset where I like wake up every day and I'm like, I am grateful for this day. I'm grateful for this breath. I've gotten into the habit every morning when I take my medicine of praying that the Lord allows the medicine to do what it's intended to do. And it's like, it's given me a good reminder of just thankfulness, gratefulness. Yeah.
I've got a side question.
Yeah.
That something that I've struggled with, and I think as I sat here and just thought about it a minute ago, and I don't know if we've touched on it, but like, can you talk about like the grief that you went through? And because as a Christian, like my wife even says stuff to me sometimes because like I can't watch a sad movie. Like I can't do it. Go into a different room or I won't watch that movie. I couldn't at my grandparents' funerals. I couldn't stand in the line with the family, shake everybody's hand. I just was overcome. And I don't know what it is about it for me. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm not afraid of, I just don't know if it's the emotion, but I just wonder, like, everybody experiences it differently, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And like maybe give advice to people. Cause like, I even know my grandmother, like going through the loss of her husband, I can only imagine losing a spouse. So like, I just wonder in that moment, like, what was that like? And like, what is your advice to people that are going through, and not grief from death, but just grief in general of like, how do you rest in that?
Yeah.
Something I've never done good, and I don't know how to good, and I haven't experienced a ton of it, but just a question I had.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know the full answer or the right answer to that question. I think, for me, I grieved, but then I feel like the Lord also kind of started filling me with like a weird, odd joy. And I maybe not joy first. At first, it was just more peace. But yeah, I think like it's healthy to grieve. It's healthy to process. If you read the Psalms, that's all a lot of the Psalms are grieving, right? And I think the Lord wants us to bring our griefs to him. Like he wants us to like not fix ourselves up and, but he wants us to grieve, and give him kind of our pure, raw emotion. I mean, there were times, man, where I was praying to the Lord, literally just bawling, laying on the floor, thinking about not being able to walk my daughter down the aisle or, all of these things. And they still, I can, it's okay for me to grieve, but it's also okay for me to know that everything is going to be okay if I'm not here, and to trust in the Lord's goodness and his sovereignty. And so I think if you grieve trusting in like man's ability, that's not the right way to do it. Like grieve knowing that God is sovereign and knowing that God is good and knowing that he has plans for us to prosper and that all things work together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. So yeah, I mean, there's purpose in sadness, there's purpose in grief, but yeah.
An uncomfortable truth that I hate because I'm such a glutton for comfort and making my life all about me, is that true growth and what God promises to us doesn't come any way apart from suffering. It's so clear all throughout the New Testament. Jesus suffered. We're called to suffer. We don't only rejoice in the joy and hope of being justified by faith in Romans chapter 5. We also rejoice in our suffering because we know that suffering produces endurance and endurance produces character and character produces hope. And James commands us to count it all joy when you meet trials of various kinds, because the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, and let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. So you have to rejoice in the trial to have the steadfastness to let it have its full effect. And so the vehicle that God uses in our lives is to crush us in a kind way to create dependence upon him. And I've experienced that in much smaller ways than being diagnosed with cancer. But I mean, being stripped of myself is the greatest grace that can be given to me. I often struggle to pray to the Lord to do these things in me because I know it's painful when he does it. And I know I'm such a prideful, narcissistic maniac that it's going to like rip me apart. But every time he does it, he's good and he's kind and he's gracious. And I come out the other side having another stake in the ground of having another stone to be like, all right, he was faithful there. There's a little bit less of me now that's able to be killed. So
100%. I think in all of that, in what you talked about with the things that you're putting comfort in, and then even the grief discussion and all of those lines, the most simple, most important thing is just a rightly ordered understanding of God and him being sovereign over it all and him being first. And you have that when you're thinking about grief, you understand the purpose of the things you're going through that you're grieving. If you put it in the context of the comforts of this world or the things that we're striving after, you can know and find peace and understanding in that there are good things and it's okay to save and it's okay to be excellent at your job. But when those things become priorities over God,
Yes.
that's
The relationship with it.
that's where it becomes an issue. And
100%.
When a good thing becomes the ultimate thing.
Yes. And I had many things that I just found joy and found my satisfaction in, that had become ultimates. And, Lord exposed it.
Is there anything just that you've been sharing as you've been going through this, or that is on your heart that you feel like we've missed before we kind of go through our normal wrap up? I want to make sure that we feel like you've covered the story and the Lord's faithfulness in this.
I think I've kind of written down, like, as the Lord has shown me, his purposes in suffering. And, I've kind of come up with like 5 different ways. I think one of the ways is how others relate to us as Christians, because we suffer knowing that our hope is not of this world, right? And so we can be content in all circumstances, like Paul says in Philippians 4:11 and 12. You can be content in the highs and you can be content in the lows. And it's because our hope is rooted in something that's not material. It's rooted in something that's not of this world. So one of the ways that, or reasons why we suffer, is for other people's relation to us. Secondly, our relation to others. I feel like I have had a heart for other people who suffer because I have suffered. And, I used to avoid people as they suffer. I didn't know what to say. I didn't, so I avoided people in their suffering seasons. And now I reach out, because I suffered, because I understand what comforted me in this season, I'm able to comfort other people. I think the third reason that I feel like the Lord has used in my life is my own sanctification.
Amen.
And I think the Lord puts us through these fiery trials to refine us. And, I feel like he's afflicted my flesh, but he's refined my spirit. The fourth reason, is that God loves us and he calls us his sons, and it says it everywhere. I don't think all forms of suffering are discipline. But I think some of them are. And I think Revelation 3:19 says, I discipline those that I love, so repent and come back to me. Hebrews 12 talks all about him disciplining us because we're his sons. And so it's like, what an honor, that God, my heavenly Father, like, knew I needed to be whipped into shape. And then lastly, and I think like something that I feel like has overflowed into everything and how I live my life, is just that, like, I've fixed my eyes on eternity and I realize that I am not made for this world. John 16:33, in this world you will have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world. And then John 17:16 says, they're not of the world as I'm not of the world. So we are not, we have to be in the world, not of the world. And I realize that I have all of eternity waiting for me. And my entire purpose on this earth is now to love and to serve other people and try to extend the message of the gospel so that others can share in that. And I don't think I had that type of eternal mindset prior to this. I think it comes with knowing that your days are numbered. But I'm grateful for it, and I've had more peace and more joy in my life, less anxiety, facing a terminal diagnosis that I still feel like the Lord can heal me from. Like, he's obviously done something miraculous with my voice. Like, he could rip these tumors out of me tomorrow. And I'm still praying for that. But like, if that doesn't happen, I know there's still greater purpose in that, and I can trust that. I got to lead worship at church. 2 weekends ago. And that was fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Are we going to do it more than quarterly?
Yeah, I'm going to open up my schedule more than quarterly.
Just kind of how we normally close is just kind of asking people, and it's a little bit different for you, but I think it's still applicable, just where you're at now, how you are stewarding what the Lord's entrusted you with. So for you, just what does this continued fight with cancer look like? And what, in light of everything that we just discussed that you've learned and been sanctified through this, what does life look like for going forward?
Yeah. I feel like in a weird way, the Lord has entrusted me with cancer to steward, and suffering well and dealing with this well. There have been several people in my community that I know have either strengthened their faith or come to faith through my journey. And, again, like my whole prayer in that is like, I must decrease, he must increase. Like, I do not feel worthy, but I want to be a vessel where he can be exalted. And so, I think it's every single day praying that the Lord can use me in some way, shape, or form. And this story that he has given me and this story that he has entrusted me with, that I can somehow use that to advance the gospel in some way, shape, or form.
Amen. And our last question, we always ask this is kind of fun. Is there anything that you would point listeners to, whether it's a book of the Bible, a specific passage, a song, in your case, since music is important to you, just something that they could turn to and listen to that would encourage them in their own walk with the Lord?
Oh, man.
Or book, anything.
Yeah.
Or multiple things.
Gosh, I mean, I would say like the song Heart of Worship, like listening to the lyrics in that and then examining your own heart. Like there's a line in there that says, "I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing that I've made it." And like, I think there's a lot of things in my life that I made it, And then it says, "The Lord, you're looking into my heart." He doesn't, we see actions, he sees heart. And, so I think that, I think 2 Corinthians 4 and 5 have like really helped me kind of deal with just the temporal nature of life and viewing life in that way. And then I am so ready for eternity, and like whether I die or whether he comes back, I'm ready to be with him.
To live as Christ, to die as gain.
Yeah, bingo.
Before we finish, how can people follow?
Brock loves to do the drawback after we shut it down.
Always have to do. How can people follow along? I know you have Instagram. We'll tag you, but is there anywhere else? I was trying to that they can follow along.
Yeah, so I have a Instagram page. It's kind of silly, Bo knows the way, but I felt like the Lord was teaching me a lot, and I started the Instagram when I didn't have a voice, and he's kind of restored it through it. But that Instagram, and then I also have a Caring Bridge page that I need to update.
I looked at it for research of this, and it was like October. I was like, there's a lot that's happened since October.
Because I was asking Ben, I was like, so. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for your vulnerability.
Yeah. Thank you all for having me.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Hey guys, this is Blaine, one of the hosts here at Entrusted. We are really grateful you chose to spend some time with us today. We know you have lots of options, and we hope that the thoughts and the messages from this talk we had with our guests really propelled you to explore the design that you were created for. The best ways to support us, check out our socials, like, subscribe, leave a review, tell your friends, family, coworkers, neighbors. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we hope you'll tune back in next time.